Hey, what's going on? It's Tripp from trippadvice.com. And if you see the lovely mohawked man next to me, Jason Capital, you'll know that I'm doing an interview with him today, and we're going to be talking about some cool stuff. So, Jason, dude, thanks for coming on, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you for having me on the show. And like I said, I'm looking forward to delivering some serious value here today for you
Yeah,
guys.
absolutely. Listen, one of the things that intrigues me the most about you, and I'm sure a lot of guys who have seen your YouTube channel and your newsletter and all the things that you have and all your products, is that you tend to be more controversial, I think, than a lot of other dating coaches out there. And it even says on your website you're one of the most, it says like the most honest dating coach, or like the world's honest dating coach. And
hmm
it's funny because that makes sense, because when we're honest, we tend to be more controversial.
hmm
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So just the stuff you say, it's kind of like no BS, like straight to the point. And I think that a lot of guys appreciate that. I know I appreciate that. I try to do the same thing with my stuff. So yeah, I guess like let's talk about that. I feel like even being honest, being controversial, can also help you attract more women into your life. I feel like that definitely kind of sparks something when you're talking to a girl. What do you think?
Absolutely, man. That's a really good observation. I'm glad you brought that up. One of my good friends I was in Vegas this past weekend, and when you go on those like 2 or 3 day trips with your friends where there's like a couple sayings you guys keep saying over and over and it becomes like an inside joke,
Yeah.
and by the end of the weekend you just say it and everyone starts laughing, like beer goggles or some shit like that. So for some reason he kept saying at the start of it, he saw some like meme that was like, I don't. It was like, I don't fuck with cool people. I fuck with real people. Was like his thing. So he kept saying that all weekend. He was like, fuck cool people. I fuck with real people. Like he kept saying that. And I'm glad he said it because it's 100% true. And it's very congruent with what I do. So like you said, I'm known as Jason Capital, America's honest dating coach. And the honesty part, what we're describing there isn't like Jason Capital always tells the truth. Because like, when you're flirting with girls, you don't lie, of course, but you're throwing out all kinds of crazy references, and you mess with her a little bit. You I don't know, you tell her that another girl just bought you a drink at the bar because she's trying to get you drunk, or you're just joking. So it's not necessarily about always like being completely upfront and honest about everything. What it is you're presenting the real version of you to the girl. You're not presenting some version of you that a pickup coach told you to present. You're not coming to her with a feathered boa and some fake story, right, about your stripper ex-girlfriend who bought you a Ferrari.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not doing any of those things. Okay, you're presenting the real version of you, the best version of you, but you're not holding anything back. And when you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to be what we call being polarizing, which is what I want every guy to be. It's what I want all my clients to be. I want you to be fucking polarizing, right? And what that means is when you present the real version of you, like the one where you're not trying to piss someone off, but you aren't afraid of pissing someone off or being controversial. You're just going to be honest, right? If you think like if some girl comes up to you and she asks you how she looks in that dress and you think it's not that good, you're not going to lie to her and be like, you know what, you're wearing it pretty well, like it's pretty good. You're gonna be honest with her. You're gonna be like, you know what, it's okay, but I think we could do way better. And you have a little charm with it, but you're going to be honest with her. And when you are that way and you are polarizing, what's going to happen is half the people, okay, are going to fucking love it about you, right? Like half the people who know me out there, they fucking love me. They love that I'm my truth. They love that I'm honest. And the other half fucking hate me, right? So that's what happens when you're polarizing. You pull certain people in and you repel other people. So the other half, they fucking hate me. That guy's a cocky bastard with the mohawk, blah, 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 blah. And they hate it. And the other half love it. But in truth, that's really what as a man, that's what your goal should be. You should aim to be that polarizing, because those people who love you, they fucking love you. So those girls who love you, they don't just kind of like you. They're not just kind of attracted to you. They're texting you all the time. They're calling you all the time. They want to be around you all the time because that pull, that attraction towards you is so strong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that taps into this idea that everyone's always talking about in terms of like the nice guy versus the asshole, right? I'm always saying, my thing is like, you don't want to be the nice guy, but you don't want to be the asshole. You kind of want to be a nice guy with an edge. So it's
Mhm.
like, that's kind of tapping into that idea of polarity, is like you have this edge to you, something that's a little bit different, something that's marking you different from the other guys that the girl's talking to. You know what I mean?
A-
So it's like
Absolutely.
you wanna and you wanna pull it off in a certain way. I mean, you do it by being very honest. You do that with your style, your look, and the way that you kind of just like naturally don't give a shit. Do you have any tips for guys who are like they care too much what people think about them. They're really concerned that like these are the like we're talking to the guy who's like, oh, I want to be that, but I'm too scared or too frightened of having that group of people hate me or ticking anyone off. Like it's too much for them. Like anything a guy can do to
Sure.
tap into that.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously, as you know, Tripp, this is a subject we could spend like 10 hours talking
Oh
about,
yeah, of course.
um, or an entire boot camp figuring out. There's two things that come to mind, though, that should help whoever's listening right now and is dealing with that. Number one is that the environment that they're in consistently has created certain role expectations of them. So if they're around their family, and I know that sounds complicated, I'll explain it real quick here. If they're around their family and their friends, they've been around these people for 5 or 10 or 15 years, or whatever, all these people have a certain expectation of them, how they're supposed to act, who they're supposed to be, what kinds of things they say, what kind of things they don't say. And subconsciously, we are aware of these expectations all the time. So if you're around all these people who expect you to be nice and quiet and stay in your little box of bullshit, but you're being nice, so you're not hurting anyone, but you're really not being the real you. If they're constantly boxing you into that expectation, and it's being reinforced all the time by being around them, it's going to be really hard to break out of that if you do not remove yourself from that environment temporarily. So the first thing I do is literally just pull yourself out of this world where everyone expects you to be a little bitch. Like that's the best way I can say it. Because listen, if you're not putting the real version of you out there, if you're not being totally fucking truthful with the world all the time, then you're being fucking selfish, right? You're not even like you were born into this world to give your gifts to the world, and you're just hiding in this little box of false security. So pull yourself out of that environment and those expectations those people are placing on you, and go meet some new people, some new friends, hang out in some new environments, and consciously go into those environments with a new self-image, a new idea of the person that you're going to be, right? And I don't want that, one of the best ways that I tell my guys to do is just pick a movie character who you like and who you kind of vibe with. For me, I like Tony Stark. Iron Man is my personal favorite. But pick a guy. Maybe it's a Harvey Specter on Suits, or maybe it's a Denzel Washington. Maybe it's a bombastic guy like a Kevin Hart. Whoever it is, pick that guy. And when you go into that new environment, just tell yourself, you know what? For the first 3 minutes here, I'm just going to kind of act like him, right? I'm just going to step into a new role. It's almost like I'm on stage playing a new character, and I'm just going to act like him with this new environment. And what happens is all these new people who didn't know the previous you, they see this new version of you. They're like, damn, this guy's kind of like Kevin Hart. He's kind of funny, or he's kind of smooth like Harvey Specter. And all of a sudden, every time you go back into that environment, those people are expecting you to be that way, and it's going to reinforce that new self-image. So that's the first thing, if that makes sense. I hope, does that make sense?
Totally, I'm following.
Okay,
Keep
perfect.
going.
Okay,
You're
so
on a
that's the
roll.
one. So that's killer. That will work. And the second thing, if you're acting that way, is this is one of the most embarrassing things I could ever tell you, Tripp, or I could have released to 100 and something thousand people on the internet to your subscribers. But when I was 20 years old, actually, at Michigan State University, I was a virgin. I didn't know what to say. Like, you see me up here talking nonstop. I couldn't do this, especially around girls. I was incredibly boring. And the biggest reason was I gave a fuck. Right? I gave a fuck what people thought. I was worried about what they were going to think. I was afraid to make jokes. I was afraid to be cocky. I was afraid to lead. I was afraid to take charge on a date. I was afraid to do all these things because I gave a fuck. So what I somehow decided to do, I don't know where it came from, was I would be walking to class in like the dead of winter in East Lansing, Michigan, like backpack full of like dumbass textbooks, right? And I'm walking to class in the snow, and there's people everywhere. All these kids are walking to class, and I was like, I have to train myself not to care. Like, I have to I have to do this in my life. I have to figure this out. So what I did was, with the backpack on, I would just go like this. I'm gonna do it now so the computer doesn't shake. But I would just go like this. I go like I'd be like, what is the weirdest physical act I can do right now in front of all these people, right? To prove to myself that I don't care. Because if you can do something that embarrassing in front of all these people, you're not really going to give a fuck about telling a girl that she's too short for you. You know what I mean? Like, if you can do that, you can most certainly lead a girl, tease her a little bit, and then take her on an adventure that she's never been on before. That's not very hard. So I would do this 5 times a day for maybe a year straight, and by the end of it, it becomes so ingrained in me not to care what people think physically that verbally it didn't really matter either. So those are the two things I would definitely recommend for the guys out there.
No, that's great. Great advice. Absolutely. It's funny because I used to hear about these like social exercises, kind of like you're saying right there, like
Hmm.
walking around with a dildo on your head, or going up to a stranger and telling her your deepest, darkest secret, like something extremely embarrassing. But any of those exercises, I mean, what it does, I feel like something like that puts things in perspective. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
you go out there and you do something that crazy and you realize that like no one really cares, or you even realize that like you'll do something really wacky and maybe people are like, holy shit, what's this guy doing? But then like once it's over, it's over. And then you're back to being you, going back home, wherever you're going, and nothing's really changed. It's like, I feel like what you're talking about is like doing something to prove to yourself that we are taking life sometimes a little bit too seriously. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point. Yeah. And that's what you are. Every time you do it, you are proving to yourself once again that A, you don't really care what anyone else thinks and that life is fun. Like, why not fucking enjoy it, you know? And you do
Right.
that often enough. And I say, you do that often enough. And of course, because it's physical, it pumps your state up for 10, 20, 30 minutes after. You got this little high, like this little rush. And the state that you're in most often becomes your default setting. So you do it 5 times a day. Eventually, you're going to wake up feeling like that, and you're going to go to sleep feeling like you don't give a fuck.
Right.
It's pretty fucking cool. There's also I don't want to run out here too long, but there's a cognitive bias called the spotlight effect, which researchers, I think it was at Boston College for some reason, this is coming to mind.
Yeah,
But
I've heard of this. Gone.
okay, so there was just a quick study they did in college where they had a control group and they had the experimental group and then another experimental group where they gave a kid in a class a normal T-shirt and he wore it to class and it did not stand out at all, and they were like, um, what percent of the students in the class do you think like picked you out or saw that you were wearing that shirt? And he was like, none. Like, I just fit in, right? No one would expect. I wouldn't expect anyone to notice that. And then they gave him like a really fucked up shirt. I don't remember what it was exactly. Go Google it to get the exact
It was
experiment.
I almost remember it was like Tony Bennett or something like that, or some
With like
like
a picture on it and some,
yeah,
yeah,
some like
some.
picture of like some old jazz piano player or something like that. But anyways, it was something really weird. Go on.
It was weird. Like if you're in college right now and you're like I want to be cool. This is not the shirt you would wear. Like, this is like it's a nerdy shirt or whatever you want to call it, and it stands out. So he wore it to class. And they asked him, what percent of kids in the class do you think like were looking at you or noticed that? And he said, I don't know, 50, 60, 80% or something. And then they surveyed the rest of the class and asked them, how many of you noticed his odd little Tony Bennett shirt? And it was like 15%. So in his head, he had imagined 3 to 5 times as many people were watching him or noticing him as they actually were. So spotlight effect is this little issue in our brain that we're hardwired with to think that people are paying more attention to us than they actually are. When the truth is, everyone's so in their head. Everyone's focusing on themselves. No one notices you. No one's going to care if you're all of a sudden become cocky or you all of a sudden become this playful, really positive, charismatic guy when you didn't used to be. No one cares, right? They talk about it for a day and then they're on to the next thing, and all of a sudden, your life is way better for it. So
Right.
it's another one there.
No, that's great. I mean, yeah, it's like we are the stars of our own movie called life. You know what I mean? And we don't know different. It's like I'm not saying people are narcissistic by default, but we are the center of the universe because it's all we
Yeah.
know.
We're pretty narcissistic by default, at varying degrees, but we all kind of are.
At varying degrees. Well, of course. I mean, like we have to care for ourselves. This is, uh, I hate to sound terrible here, but I think there's very few selfless acts in the world that actually exist, and that's okay. This is just how it is. Like we are always trying to do the things that we need to do to be happy and try to be comfortable. And so, of course, naturally, we're always going to be thinking like, yeah, this person's looking at us, like this person's looking, and it's like, and we care so much of our little fragile little egos of getting hurt, like we tripped on the sidewalk and someone looks and maybe they did. Do you think they give a fuck 2 minutes later? No, they don't.
Hmm.
And even if they do, who cares? So it's like, yeah, and of course, all this theory is good to say, but I mean, if you're listening, you're still here on the video. I mean, listen to Jason here. Like, do some of these social exercises. Prove to yourself that people don't really care as much as you think they do. So, dude, that's great. All right, let's wrap it up. This is some great information. If you guys like this video, press like, but also write down below that you want to see more, and we'll do more interviews with Jason. But Jason, real quickly, where can they find you? Tell us what you're working on, what you're up to, so guys can start checking out your stuff.
Sure, man. Definitely check out my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Jason Capital Dating. I try to post a video a day over there. And if you are not on my VIP email list, that is where I recommend that that's the most important step you could take. You go to jasoncapitaldating.com, opt in. You'll get a free 19-minute video called What to Say, which is pretty damn good on its own. But then, of course, now you're on the VIP email list where you're going to get about 1 to 2 thousand words of like real actionable value to help you with your sex life, your social life, and your financial life. So those would be the two next steps for you to take.
Awesome. Go check that out. And of course, you'll see a little annotation below that's going to direct you to his YouTube channel. Check out his stuff. Great videos. Jason, man, thank you all the way in the OC for doing this little interview. And hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Hell yeah, man. Big fan of your work, man. So I appreciate being on your show.
Absolutely. Thanks.